Hello, and welcome to the Cheshire and Merseyside Social Work Teaching Partnership podcast, Research Journeys in Social Work Practice. In this series, we explore the different paths social workers take into the field of research. Today, we're focusing on Rachel Culverwell's journey from practice experience to evidence, building a research pathway as a social worker and learning what motivated and shaped their path along the way. This is a podcast series where we are looking into social workers' journeys into research, and in this episode, we are looking into Rachel's journey. Our mission in this deep dive is really to get to the heart of how Rachel, someone who was, right there on the front line, managed to take her day-to-day observations and, maybe more importantly, her own personal challenges and build them into a real research agenda.
And that's such a critical point. When research comes from practitioners, it's just different. It's not abstract.
Right.
It's grounded in the messy reality of the work. Rachel's journey isn't just about asking questions. It's about asking the right questions, because she was living the problem firsthand.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Where did she start? What was her background?
Well, she qualified back in 2014 and went straight into frontline child protection in East Lancashire.
So, straight into the deep end, really. That's probably one of the most demanding areas of social work.
Oh, absolutely. And over time, she moved into a managerial role. She's now a practice development manager, so she's supporting the MASH duty and assessment teams.
A pretty broad view of the system, then.
A very broad view. She's also the police children's safeguarding lead. So it's from that vantage point, managing other practitioners, that she started to notice something.
Something she called the unnamed problem. What was that exactly? It wasn't about process or paperwork, was it?
No, not at all. It was about the emotional cost. She saw this huge gap. Despite the incredibly heavy nature of child protection work, nobody was openly talking about vicarious trauma.
So it wasn't just that it was ignored, the language wasn't even there.
Exactly. The term just wasn't part of the conversation, not in the support systems, not in supervision. It was just invisible.
We should probably pause on that for a second. So anyone listening, the difference between burnout and vicarious trauma is pretty significant, right?
It's a huge distinction. Burnout is feeling overwhelmed, exhausted. Vicarious trauma is. It's a fundamental change in how you see the world.
Okay.
It comes from that constant exposure to other people's trauma. You start to feel the world is unsafe, you lose hope. And that's what Rachel was seeing in her staff, a deep psychological toll that a day off just couldn't fix.
And this professional observation then collided with a really profound personal experience for her.
Yes. In 2021, she had a traumatic birth.
And that experience, that wasn't just a personal event, was it? It sort of became a lens.
It really did. When she was struggling to return to work, questioning her own confidence or ability to handle the job, that's when the penny dropped.
She connected her own feelings of vulnerability to what her colleagues were going through.
Precisely. She started having these quiet conversations and realized so many people were wrestling with similar feelings. They were just coping in silence because the system didn't have a name for it. It was this systemic isolation.
So her motivation it completely shifted.
It went from a management problem to a personal mission. She knew she had to use her own lived experience alongside her professional knowledge to get proper recognition and support for the workforce.
And she saw an opening because while her local authority was good on training, the actual research culture was still, emerging.
It was nascent, yeah. There was space to build something.
And that led to a very concrete turning point, a real step towards building a research infrastructure.
It did. In 2024, she successfully applied to the NHS R&D Northwest Social Care Practitioner Researcher Program. This was a game changer.
Because it gave her the structure she needed, right? I mean, after 10 years away from formal academia, that must have felt like a huge mountain to climb.
A massive hurdle. And the program gave her three vital things: structured support, that all-important protected time to actually learn and think, and access to experienced research supervisors.
Someone to just guide her through it.
Yes, someone to de-intimidate the whole academic world.
I want to go back to that idea of protected time. Because for anyone in management, especially supporting frontline teams, that can sound like a fantasy. How did she actually make that happen?
That's where her management skills really helped. She had to be strategic. She literally scheduled research time into her week as a non-negotiable priority, like any other statutory duty.
So she treated it with that level of seriousness.
She had to. And having the program's formal structure behind her gave it weight. It wasn't just her taking time off. It was part of a formal development program that would benefit the whole service.
Okay, so let's talk about that learning curve. She didn't just dive in and try to write a dissertation. What were the first steps?
She was very methodical. It was back to basics, really. attending workshops, reading academic papers, using online resources, and working very closely with her supervisor to sort of translate the academic jargon.
And she had a really clever strategy to build her confidence by starting small.
Yeah, this is so important for anyone listening. You don't have to quit your job to be a researcher. She started by contributing to things that were already part of her role.
Like audits and evaluations.
Exactly, leading on internal audits, running service evaluations, doing reflective case analyses. These were all things that helped her build those research muscles without it feeling like some separate, overwhelming task.
But even with all that, she still struggled with imposter syndrome, that feeling that she didn't belong, that her work wasn't relevant.
Almost universal for practitioners, that feeling. It comes from this idea that academic knowledge is somehow superior to practice wisdom.
So how does she get past that?
There was a pivotal shift. She realized her frontline practice wisdom wasn't a disadvantage. It was her greatest asset. It was her superpower, really.
How did that change her approach?
It made her research so much more authentic. An outside academic might ask a general question, but Rachel was asking things like, how does the language in our team meetings stop us from talking about trauma?
Right, really specific practice-based questions.
The kind of questions that ensure the answers you find will actually make sense to the people on the ground.
And then she made another smart move. She enrolled in postgraduate study in business management. That seems a bit unexpected. Why management?
It was so strategic. She knew that research is useless if it just sits on a shelf. She needed the skills to turn her findings into actual organizational change.
To project management, change management.
All of it. She needed to know how to build a business case for her recommendations, how to get them implemented across the whole system.
That's a huge lesson. Okay, let's pivot to networks, because research is never a solo activity, is it?
Never. And she was brilliant at this. She connected with academics, she joined research networks, went to conferences, and really importantly, collaborated with other practitioner researchers in her region.
And each one of those connections opened up a new perspective.
A new resource, a new idea. And she didn't just hoard that knowledge, she put it into action right away.
Creating a kind of feedback loop in her own workplace.
Yes. She'd be doing her literature review and would bring an idea from a paper into the next team meeting. She shared recommendations as she found them. It was this immediate, iterative process.
And that started a real cultural shift, didn't it? Just by shining a light on this unnamed problem.
That was the biggest impact. Because she had data, she had evidence. Staff started talking about vicarious trauma openly, without feeling shame. And leaders started to really listen.
So it moved from being a buzzword to something concrete.
It did. And her recommendations started being implemented. Things like changing supervision, new training, real, tangible support.
And what about the impact on her own career? This must have completely changed her professional trajectory.
Oh, profoundly. Her confidence grew, her profile grew. She's developing these high-level presentation and writing skills, submitting abstracts to national conferences.
And she even ended up on a government-endorsed podcast.
Yeah. She became a recognized voice in trauma-informed practice, not just locally, but nationally.
She calls this process igniting a spark. What do you think is the biggest lesson she learned that you'd want to pass on?
I think her key takeaway is the most powerful one. You do not have to work in a university to do important research.
You don't need the title.
No. She realized that the most powerful change-making research so often comes from the people who are closest to the practice, the ones who know exactly where the problems are.
So for a social worker listening now who maybe feels that same spark of curiosity about a problem in their own practice, what's Rachel's advice on taking that first step?
Her advice is to start incredibly small. Don't think about a PhD. Think about doing a critical analysis of 5 case files.
Or keeping a reflective journal on one specific topic for a month.
Exactly. Or just sign up for some email updates from research bodies in your field. Start building the vocabulary.
She wants people to see that so much of what they already do, that critical thinking and supervision, is rooted in research. They just don't call it that.
And her biggest piece of advice, and this speaks to what we said earlier, is to tell people what you're interested in. The more she talked about vicarious trauma, the more people pointed her towards resources, contacts, opportunities.
Networking really is the most powerful tool.
Without a doubt.
It all ties together so well. Her journey is just a fantastic model of how personal experience plus structured support can turn those quiet observations into powerful advocacy that actually changes an organization.
And she's not stopping. She wants to keep building that research capacity in her organization, looking at how frontline workers can use research in their day-to-day assessments.
So the ripple effect continues.
It does. Her journey didn't just change her career. It sparked a real interest in research among her colleagues and made emotional well-being a key priority for the organization.
It really shows the power of one person's curiosity, doesn't it?
It really does. And it leaves a question for you listening at home. If Rachel could take her struggle with vicarious trauma and turn it into evidence-based change, what's the hidden issue in your professional life, the thing you see every day but maybe haven't named yet? What could that become with the lens of curiosity and evidence? What's your first small step?
Something powerful to mull over until our next deep dive. Thank you for joining us today for this look into Rachel Culverwell's inspiring journey.